All right, thanks for joining us on TVC Breakfast. We are going into the headlines now, see what the papers are saying this morning. And it's really an interesting Thursday morning. I have with me in the studio to do justice to understanding what the headlines are. Seun Awongbonle, he joins me right now. Good morning. It's nice to see you.
Good morning.
Very good. Pleasure. Okay. We get along. We'll be expecting, excuse me, the next guest to also join us as we get along. But let's begin with the Nigerian Tribune this morning. Buhari to Fulani herders. You can live in the South, says all Nigerians free to move, stay in any part of the country. Laments polarizing role of socio-political groups on security issues. NEF quit order reckless. Southern Middle Belt leaders are saying this. Okay, that's what you find on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune. We have News Direct is next now. Reps order IGP, DSS to seal Edo Assembly. You find that on the front page of the News Direct. Okay. Let's move now to Blueprint. CJN Tanko gets confirmation, says corruption heavy at lower courts. They insist on financial autonomy for judiciary, explains technicalities of verdict on Osun poll. You find that on the front page of the Blueprint. The Nation is next now. CJN, corrupt judges must be dealt with like others. Muhammad seeks review of criminal laws. Okay, corrupt judges must be dealt with like others. Okay, you find that on the front page of the Nation newspaper. The Guardian is where we go next now. Southeast communities restrict land sale over RUGA. Ignore calls to return to North, Buhari tells herdsmen. And youths demand arrest trial of Mieti Allah leaders. Okay, you find that on the front page of the Guardian newspaper. Let's go to the Vanguard now. Vanguard is the last paper now, and return to North call, fury as Ohaneze, Afenifere, other groups bash NEF, and that's the Northern Elders Forum. Nigeria sliding dangerously, Southern and Middle Belt leaders. NEF's directive, thoughtless, shameless. Pandef is saying this. Buhari to Fulani herdsmen, ignore NEF calls to leave South. Okay, you find all that on the front page of the Vanguard newspaper. And I think that's where I like us to start with this morning. Now when issues like this come up, you know, we have often said that we have been with each other and we have disagreed when it comes to the regions, disagreed at different times, reconciled at different times, back and forth. So when it comes to the idea of nationality, the idea of patriotism, all of these social cultural groups should have even known better on how to, you know, make statements and not to divide the people. What concern do you have when you hear comments, because the president is trying to put things right now, because constitutionally everyone has the right, as well as you're a Nigerian, you have the right to live and reside anywhere?
Well, I'd like to start by saying that for Nigeria, stronger together, the principle of coming together as one, it's not just a lesson for history, it's actually the future that we all have to live. And I think that most of the components, parts of Nigeria, are yet to internalize the fact that our strength lies in our unity, our strength lies in our diversity. Now, the major problem for Nigeria today, or what I describe as our buttress for Nigeria, has been our inability to manage our diversity and turn it into a strength for the country. Because if you look at it, even in the United States of America, you know, there are different sides. You know, you have the black, you have the white, you know, you have this, you know, the Spanish and the rest of them. And that is why they say that America is actually a country for, you know, a country that has liberty, allows for liberty, because they understand that even going forward, the strength of America actually lies in people that have actually come, not even Americans themselves. So going forward, I think it is important that we continue to preach unity, we continue to preach diversity, we continue to preach, you know, togetherness and coming together.
The concern, even in fact, is that when elders, people who were there even before Nigeria Nigeria came together as an independent country, who knew, who understand where Nigeria has been before, the metamorphosis of Nigeria, and even up until now and where we're going. They are the ones making statements. Sometimes they make statements, sometimes you wonder, do you really understand the DNA of this country?
What you have today is largely suspicion, is recrimination, is fear of ethnic domination. And then we can't move forward if you continue, if there's so much suspicion in the land. Everybody feels, oh, Hausa wants to dominate Yoruba, Yoruba wants to dominate Hausas. We should live beyond that. You know, Nigeria should come first, but for most of us, you know, we still do not see ourselves as Nigerians first. We see ourselves as either Yoruba or Hausa or Igbo, and you know, and the rest of them. And I don't think we can move forward if we do not internalize the fact that we are first as Nigerians before we are anything
else. Okay, I have joining me now Dr. Dane Kere from the University of Lagos. Dr. Kerry, good morning.
Thank you, good morning.
I guess the traffic or something held you back today.
No, insecurity.
No, there's no insecurity that bad in Lagos right now.
No, it is. A friend of mine was attacked with all manner of weapons just 2 days ago around my bus stop, so I need to take my time to get out of the place.
So you need to take caution.
Yes.
All right, but we're glad you were able to make it anyway.
All
right, we were talking about the headline on the front page of the Nigeria Tribune. It was said, Buhari to Fulani herders, you can live in the south, and says all Nigerians free to move, stay in any part of the country, and laments polarizing role of socio-political groups on security issues. And NEF quit order reckless. Southern Middle Belt leaders are saying that the Northern Elders Forum had issued a statement recently, which a lot of Nigerians feel that elders should know better when it comes to uniting. When the younger part of when the family members are disagreeing on things, the elders know how to bring everybody back together. And in the spirit of unity and how things are going, the elders, like they say, what the elder sees sitting down, a young person can climb the mountain and you never see it. Yes. So when the elder who is supposed to be sitting down and seeing father makes a statement that a little maybe a younger person should make, maybe that could be troubling.
Yeah, it could be, but again, you equally need to look at, you have just said that the elder, in most cases, will see further than the child will see. So if the elder is making a statement, sometimes it could be as a function of what he is seeing as well. You see, but in any case, coming on the issue of whether Fulanis can live anywhere, that is guaranteed by the Constitution. What is, however, not, you know, provided for is a situation whereby they will acquire, you know, government will acquire settlements for them. That's not part of it. We have always had the Fulanis in the south. You have Hausa quarters, you have the Sabos and the rest of them, even in the south. Most of these people are either Hausas or Fulanis, right? But it's only when, you know, there are certain issues that seem to undermine the interest of the state and the security of the people that you begin to see all these dissenting voices. But I am thinking that Nigeria still has the opportunity for everybody to go about its normal businesses. The cattle herders, the herders are businessmen, the farmers are businessmen. I don't think it would be right for anyone to destroy the other person's business. The laws are provided enough for that. Perhaps enforcement is a challenge, but then a scenario in which you use your cattle to graze on somebody else's farm and you are bullying the person, I think those are the things that are really causing the challenges. And I've told you before on this platform that my father's closest friend lost 2 of his sons to these, you know, herders. Unfortunately, you don't even provoke anything before they attack. The moment they see you in the bush, the next thing is to shoot. And that was how.
Well, that in the eyes of the law, certainly that is described as criminality.
So that is the point. The criminality needs to be dealt with. Nobody is saying that you shouldn't rear your cattle wherever you feel like. But a scenario in which you'll be moving from place to place, destroy the other person's own business, that is what brings about. And unfortunately, to these ones that we're even talking about, it's not just about Fulani as a tribe or a race or whatever. These AK-47 armed herders are the ones who are actually worried about.
Certainly, like you know that the Fulani we have always known have been friendly people.
Certainly.
Very generous people, because when they come to your community, in fact, they come with fura dununu, they come with all of those things just as gifts to people. That's what we grew up.
Even the
So
cattle, they even used to give, sometimes, in some cases, okay, your community has hosted us for this long.
Exactly.
Take this cow.
Take this cow, exactly. That is what we're used to. So the point there, that is why a lot of Nigerians are saying that a lot of those coming that you see with guns and weapons are not originally Nigerian. But what can be done to ensure that they don't pose threats to Nigerians is what the difference is, and all of that.
Certainly.
But the idea of we have come to stay as Nigeria, that idea, that notion, that understanding of the fact that we have come to stay, whether you're from the north, you're from the south, east, wherever, whether you are whatever religion, we have always come to stay. At what point can we realize that? Let me ask you this last question, so that whatever statement anyone is making is not to the issue of my children return home, or everybody here should, if you don't come from here, leave this area or something. Yeah.
Oh, well, I'd like to start from where Mr. Dan actually stopped. And I want to say that those actually carrying guns, I do not agree when we call them, Fulani herdsmen. I prefer that we call them militias. These are militias, these are bandits, these are terrorists, these are violent groups, and they must be called what they are. We must not continue to find, a convenient identity for them. Government must take them out, regardless of where they come from, who they are, or wherever they are from, either they are Yoruba, they are Hausa, they are Igbo, or whatever. Government must identify that, terrorism, banditry, kidnapping, thuggery does not know any tribe, does not know any ethnicity, and government must face them squarely. And that is why we have continued to say that, perhaps, the Nigerian police or, our internal security forces lack the capacity to actually take these people out. And that is why, in trying to also put these things into perspective, we must understand that, we are first Nigerians, and that's why when Yorubas sit down and say, oh, okay, these are Hausas are the ones inciting violence, Hausas say, oh, Yorubas are the ones inciting violence. No, we must all come together to understand that our common denominator is first that we are all Nigerians. And it is very disappointing that even those that have been around for longer, even the aged ones and even the septuagenarians, we still find the embers of discord, they find the embers of, of disunity. You cannot just imagine, how well people haven't come to actually internalize the idea of us being Nigerian. So, I mean, on the issue of the herdsmen, farmers clashes, and, the continued killings, I think that the government needs to take them out, regardless of where they are from. There must not be any ethno-religious sentiment.
All right, we have to live together as one.
I think we were first Yorubas, Hausas, Fulanis, Isokos before we became Nigeria.
Well, that is very arguable.
There's nothing to argue about
that's very arguable. Because
what was brought together, we already established nations. So that was not arguable.
The point there is,
the point should be, how do we work out the possibility of the unity of Nigeria?
Nigeria is a make-up.
Buhari to Fulani herders, you can live in the south, says all Nigerians free to move, stay in any part of the country. Laments polarizing role of socio-political groups on security issues. NEF, that's Northern Elders Forum, quit other reckless southern middle belt leaders. And we move to the front page of News Direct. Reps order Inspector General of Police, DSS, to seal Edo Assembly. On the front page of the blueprint, CJN Tanko gets confirmation, says corruption heavy at lower courts. And on the front page of the Nation newspaper, CJN corrupt judges must be dealt with like others. Mohammed seeks a review of criminal laws. To the Guardian now, Southeast communities restrict land sale over RUGA, ignore calls to return to North, Buhari tells herdsmen. Youth demand arrest, trial of Miyetti Allah leaders. And finally, on the front page of the Vanguard newspaper, return to North call, fury as Ohaneze, Afenifere, other groups bash Northern Elders Forum. Nigeria sliding dangerously, Southern Middle Belt leaders, NEF directive thoughtless, shameful, Pandef. Buhari to Fulani herdsmen ignore NEF's calls to leave South. But gentlemen, I would like for us to look at the front page of the Nation newspaper this morning. CJN corrupt judges must be dealt with. The new Chief Justice of Nigeria, that's Tanko Muhammad, was speaking yesterday while he was being, queried or, interviewed by the Senate yesterday, and he made some tough statements. And let's start with you, Dr. Ikere. He's talking tough. Talking about corrupt judges must be dealt with like other citizens in the country. What do you make of that?
Well, thank you. It's interesting. There's always a starting point, and usually for any new sheriff, you want to do things that could carry the people along and
really
create some optimism.
He's been in the acting capacity, so to speak. So
yeah, but he has not been the Chief Justice of the Federation.
January 25.
So now, Onoga did the same thing too. He made speeches of this kind as well, how he was going to transform, how he was going to do this. At the end of the day, that was the same thing that took him out of the office. So the most important thing now is you have identified the challenge. He has told us that there is corruption, even in the judiciary. What we are waiting to see is how he will deal with this issue of corruption. But again, more importantly, that ministry, even though on his own, cannot actually, bring about justice, though called...
Absolutely. And so he appealed to the legislature to actually look at making amendments to our criminal laws. Amendments
of any kind will never make that ministry alone to bring about justice. There's no way one ministry can bring about justice. All right? They can only make rulings on laws. That is not justice. Justice goes beyond that. All right? But with respect to their own business, their own role in the entire enterprise of governance, we want to see, speedy dispensation. Because we find cases that have been there for ages, sometimes even those who are, prosecuting these cases, those who are part of this case, even forget the content and the rest. So we want to see, the judiciary being very active, and at the same time, kind of bringing down this tension of corruption.
That's speaking about its independence, so to speak.
Independence is one. Another one is, want to see competence.
All right. Let's bring in Shehu now to look at this issue because... All right, let's bring in Shehu now to look at this issue because a recent report by Transparency International says the police and even the judiciary are some of the most corrupt institutions in Nigeria, which the CJN is alluding to now. Where would you expect him to begin to deal with this issue?
To start with, I think that the bench should actually be filled with men of dignity, men of honor, and men of probity. But sadly, what we have seen over the years is that they haven't been able to live above, most of them have not been able to live above board. While it was one of the reasons that actually informed the decision of the president to actually raid the houses of some judges at the time. And then if you look at it at the moment, there are some judges who are even standing trial, Justice Ophelia Jumogbobia is actually standing trial for corruption. These are things that are unheard of. These are things that are alien to hear that judges are actually standing corruption. Well, I'd like to say, congratulations to Justice Tanko Muhammad anyway. It's been a long one coming. Remember that in March is the 3-month interim term was actually renewed, and finally it's getting it now. Right. But I want to note that Justice Tanko Muhammad has been part of this system for as long as you can actually recall. Right. He became a judge of the court of, in the Court of Appeal since the 90s up until 2006. Then 2006 has been a justice of the Supreme Court up until now. Now, when he talks about fighting corruption in the Supreme Court, he made some very populist statements yesterday, and I can imagine for somebody that was being queried, like you said. However, what systems are you actually putting in place to actually discourage corruption in the Supreme? It is not enough for you to come out and tell us that.
About it.
Yes, we all agree, which is very sad. It is an aberration that is corruption.
Then the question is, as sad as it is, like you have rightly mentioned, how much of a danger is this to our democracy? Because these are institutions that actually entrench democracy in a society like ours. If we say we're actually practicing democracy.
It is the most dangerous thing to afflict any democracy. when the judiciary, that should be the last hope of the common man, actually immersed in corruption. And what you have is that you continue to have manipulation that will lead to, the derailment of justice. Justice will continue to be derailed. People will not get justice. And then don't forget that, the tripartite pillars of a democracy, you have equity, you have justice, and you have fairness. In a country where there is no justice, where there's no fairness, where there's no equity, because some persons have decided to be compromised, what you are simply calling for, you are calling for chaos. And then you never can imagine what... See, people are beginning to lose... People have lost hope. Like I said, there's despair in the country, there's despondency. But the last place that people cannot afford to lose hope is in the judiciary.
The judiciary. Finally, your take on this quickly. How can he revive, hope for Nigerians in the judiciary? Quickly.
Well, thank you. Yeah, he can, depending on, his own temperament and perhaps orientation. Now, we must recognize the fact that when people come to the court, what they are trying to get is what we now, describe as justice. Yeah. And justice must equally be timely. And not only that, this idea of the highest bidder, winning and all the rest, with all the technicality, we must not kill, a case on the basis of technicalities. Right. Let's get the facts that are in a case so that people would know that, because sometimes you have a real case, they tell you, oh, because of this technicality, you didn't file this one at this and you did. But meanwhile, you know that this thing has happened. Okay. Why not address what has happened? And that's what we are used to. Yes.
All right.
Let's begin with the Nigerian Tribune. Nigerian Tribune says, Buhari to Fulani herders, you can live in the south. Says all Nigerians free to move, stay in any part of the country. Laments polarizing role of socio-political groups on security issues. And NEV quit order reckless. Southern and Middle Belt leaders are saying that. Okay, let's move on now to News Direct. News Direct says reps order IGP DSS to seal Edo Assembly. Okay, that has been going on, and demand fresh inauguration, and state legislators reject directive, and 7-man Senate committee visits Obaseki, insists on peaceful resolution. You find all that on the front page of the News Direct. Okay, let's now go to Blueprint. Blueprint is on CJN Tankle gets a Senate confirmation. Says corruption heavy at lower courts, and he insists on financial autonomy for judiciary, explains technicalities of verdict on Osun polls. Okay, from there let's go to the Nation newspaper now. The Nation said on CJN, corrupt judges must be dealt with like others. As the CJN saying that Mohammed VI's review of criminal laws. Okay, he was confirmed by the Senate. Okay, move now to The Guardian. The Guardian says the southeast communities restrict land sale over RUGA. Ignore calls to return to north, Buhari tells herdsmen, and youths demand arrest trial of Miyetti Allah leaders. Okay, you find that on the front page of The Guardian. Okay, I guess we'll talk about that shortly. Now, the last paper now is the Vanguard newspaper. Return to north call fury as Ohaneze, Afenifere, other groups bashed NEF, and Nigeria sliding dangerously. Southern and Middle Belt leaders saying that. NEF's directive, thoughtless, shameful. Pandef is saying this. And Buhari to Fulani herdsmen, ignore NEF calls to leave the south. Okay, certainly he's been established and it's been reiterated on and on and on again. All Nigerians have the rights to live anywhere they want to live within the country without any restriction, without any prevention. Now, gentlemen, I'd like us to take a look at the story on the front page of The Guardian, which says that southeast communities restrict land sale over RUGA, and it's still following this issue that has been on the national debate over RUGA. The federal government has suspended the idea and issue of the RUGA, but if anyone comes to say, okay, I want to buy land and the land is for sale, why shouldn't communities decide to give out the land? Sheon, let me start with you on this.
Well, I think that going forward, what method of ranching or colony that people decide to adopt should be based, or states should be based on their peculiarities and their complexities. And that is why I think that so many people were largely opposed to the RUGA idea because it didn't go through wide consultation. And now that the government has decided to suspend it, I think what we need to do is to allow for a nationwide consultation on how we have to go about it. But I'm largely disappointed in the fact that, first, we haven't completely banned open grazing. Open grazing is still allowed. Open grazing is still, in operation in so many parts of Nigeria. But the first way to actually deal with this consistent clashes between the, the pastoral, the pastoral farmers and, and farmers is to have. First of all, you need to ban open grazing. You can't have people who would just go, have their cow and
but
cattle.
the country has always had grazing, what they call grazing routes. There has been grazing routes before. We had the chief of defense staff, or the chief of, I think former chief of defense staff, or chief of defense staff, rather, who said at the time, a few years ago, that the development had blocked those routes, and then certainly water has to find its level one way or the other, and that's why these things are happening one way or the other. Dr. Kerry, I wonder what you have to say on this.
Yes, who created the grazing routes, and who is the owner of those routes is an issue. Now, perhaps that was the position before.
But when you say, Dr. Kerry, when you say who created the grazing route, because it's like asking who created the road from one state to the other.
You can tell the federal government has roads, the states have roads.
Exactly.
So now we've gone to a point where land is now in the hands of the states, and I'm not very convinced that there's any states, that will have the capacity to create grazing routes across states. So within these states, if those states, for instance, if Benue State had created grazing routes as Benue State, I doubt if they would come out with this law they have. And even if they did, perhaps they have not even seen that it is not a workable idea in today's world. So let's turn the thing around. So that's a possibility. Now, but the point is that we have always had, these itinerant businessmen, farmers, particularly the herdsmen. They have always dwelled in, places. They have a right to move about, to stay anywhere, but that is with regard to the laws of the land. Because when they say you can stay in the south, does not mean you come and take my father's house. No. So you must comply with the rules. If you want a place, acquire your land, do your business. Nobody will stop you from doing that. But you should equally do that within the ambit of the law.
The concern now, Dr. Kerry, is even that you're talking about a portion of land, but the herders don't even reside in a certain place.
The more reason why they should reside. That's what we are saying.
Okay. So it takes us back to the issue of ranching instead.
That is the way out. There's no two ways about it. Now, but where it now becomes a federal project in the name of RUGA, acquire settlements. Settlement will go with so many things. I think that's what is raising the fear. So it's not even a question of national and wider consult. If you like, consult to the heavens, consult the hellfire, consult anywhere. It will not change this perception, because these people you want to settle in these places have shown an attitude. These are not the genuine herdsmen that we are used to, because those ones, over the years we have lived with them. We know their attitude. We know that they equally recognize the rights of the owners of those farms. They graze on grasses, not crops. But these ones not only graze on crops, they even graze on humans, because once they see you, they shoot. That's the point I'm making. So, all right, criminality must be addressed as criminality. Right. But the farmers and the herdsmen will go about doing their normal businesses.
There is still a strategy some Nigerians say government or traditional rulers or religious leaders are not towing, which has to do with a conversation. At dialogue, which has to do with a conversation. At dialogue, call the parties together, sit down and talk. It seems everybody is throwing statements on the media. You hear on the papers, you hear on TV, statement from this group, statement from the other group. But when it comes to governor, bringing all these people together to sit down on the table and let us talk about this thing, that doesn't seem to be happening.
Well, more than just having a conversation, or more than having a dialogue, or more than even having a national summit, national security summit, like the Senate President has said. I take you back to 2017 during the festive period in 2017. We had multiple attacks in Benue, and then the then Senate President, Senator Bukola Saraki, said, it decided to recall members and set up another committee on security architecture, which was actually led by then Senate Leader Ahmed Lawan. And then they decided they made a few recommendations. And how, as part of that recommendations was the National Security Summit that the Senate, the 8th Senate actually had under, under Bukola Saraki. That was, the chairman of that committee is now the Senate President. That's the Senate Leader then. They had a National Security Summit under the 8th Senate as well. Fast forward to about July 5th, they adopted about 20 recommendations from that summit. Also recall that summit was in conjunction with the executive. First time we had that in particular. So what I'm saying in essence is that now we are also coming back to having a summit. Now it is actually more than just having a summit. The recommendations of the last summit under the 8th Senate, what has happened to it? What's the level of implementation? What's the level of assessment? It is beyond, talking. It is beyond coming together to sit down. It is actually about actions. Our leader must know that they are not going to be defined by how witty they are or how poetic they could be sometimes. It is actually about how well they are willing to actually take actions. Were brought? And that's why, it is quite ironical that the chairman of that ad hoc committee
is the Senate President
now. The Senate President of the of that committee on security infrastructure to actually review our security architecture at the time is now the Senate President. He was the chairman. Those 20 recommendations, where are they? I'm asking him, and he's the one that is also fronting another national security summit. He shouldn't do, and when you have a new national security summit, you're going to spend money to convene people. You're going to bring people together. So we need action. We already know the way. The way is for states to adopt either colony or or ranching. Which one suits? Is consistent with their reality.
Most of the states
we will not end with
that.
Making this point that. Nigeria is not against cattle rearing. It's not against any form of livestock husbandry. No, we are not against that. What we are against is this criminality that is now attached to it. Those who are involved in the criminal activity must be treated as criminals.
Exactly.
And they should be dealt with by the state. You don't need the security summit to know that a thief has stolen something and he should be arrested.
Right.
They should be dealt with. There are laws for that.
All right. States like Benue and the others are leading, and they have their laws against all of those already when it comes to how to properly graze and ranching and so on. Thank you very much, Dr. Danekere, for coming on the program.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much,
Nigerians,
for coming on the program.
My pleasure.
Right.